So, Masagos in Parliament on Monday recently announced the new adoption law, a bill, which I think was quite good in terms of it's an update. It provided that new guidelines on adoption. But I think the key issue that I think the netizens have been talking about is what is a family nucleus. The bill defines a family nucleus as a male and a female, a father and a mother. And the definition of that being that, hey, you need a man and a woman to bring up a child properly. But is that the case? We know of single fathers, single mothers by virtue of say one party passing away, having to bring up the child alone, or working with relatives to help bring up the child. So the pure definition that a family nucleus must be a man and woman may not hold true. It could be actually an old wives' tale or old belief that, hey, you need a man and woman to bring a child. But in this day and age, where a village is important to bring up a child, and where you have access to information, friends that can help fill in the shoes of either spouse. So I think the key question is: do we still need a man and a woman to define a family nucleus to bring up a child, or not?
Let's look into the law of nature, the birds and the bees and all that comes with it, right? It's basic. You have mummies, you have daddies, you go to school, what's your mummy's name, what's your daddy's name? So that's how we were trained to believe, right? But then again, like what you said, is that a true family nucleus? What is a family nucleus? It's the values that we bring up, right? There are families that are not so perfect, I must say. The children could not grow up in an environment where they become good people. So does male and female work, or whether a single mother can raise a child until the child becomes as almost perfect as possible, good school, good job, good behavior, good nature, or
But he didn't exactly say that you need a man and a woman. What he said was it has to be a marriage that is recognized by the Singapore law. In that sense, it applies that it has to be a man and a woman in order to adopt a child. But if you look at it seriously, if a woman whose husband had passed on, she has to raise her child alone, and she gets foreign domestic help in, two women raising a child. So why is that not a complete family nucleus for two women to raise a child or to adopt a child to raise? Why must it be something that is recognized by the Singapore law? What if two women who are married, say in New Zealand, who were to come back and they are financially sound, they are morally correct, but it's just that it's just two women, why can't they adopt a child? Isn't that a family nucleus? Your thoughts?
if you were to be a young child, isn't that a wrong picture of a family? Where's my daddy?
But if you look at it, like if you only have a mummy and an auntie from the Philippines who's looking after you, you would also ask the same question.
Yeah. So daddy passed on. Daddy left us. Yeah. So if you do not have, so-called under the purview of the Singapore government, a healthy relationship, how do you tell a child that you don't have a mom since birth, since the beginning, or you don't have a dad since the beginning? How do you tell that child?
So I think what you are asking is how do we respond and explain to that child?
How do you raise that child in an environment where it'll be the same like the boy next door or the friend in the next seats in school, right?
I mean, it's part and parcel of growing up. You just have to explain it as it is. You know, there are families where you have a mother and father, but it's in a loveless marriage. The father and mother are there, but they're not involved in the upbringing of the child at all. You know, so where's your father? Where's your daddy? Oh, he's not around. So I think it's where the parents or the parent has to explain, and I think children in this day and age are exposed. No, they're in school and they have, oh, I only have one mommy, I only have one daddy. I think we cannot hide it from young children that, hey, no, you must have a mommy, you must have a daddy, then you have a complete nucleus. It's there, it's out there in the media. They have their friends talking about it. Hey, I only have one mother, I only have one father, or I have mother and father, but I don't see my father. He's always working or he's stationed overseas. So I think it's to answer your question, you need to just explain it as it is. But I think the crux of the issue is the morals, the values that parent or that nucleus, could be auntie and mother, auntie and father, whatever. I think we need to define that values. Then we can move forward. I mean, it's convenient, and I think from a policy, from a bureaucracy, to have, oh, we must follow one criteria. So the administrator will say, oh, you must be married in Singapore, and because marriage in Singapore equals to men and women, or then they just follow the rules like that. But I think if we could take a step back and allow case by case, I think that will really help a lot. Because we recognize in this world there's no one size fit all. You can have a guideline, you can have a minimum requirement, which is good. I think the new bill does define, it does protect that if you have a criminal record against a child, you cannot adopt. So I think that definition is much needed, and I think society in Singapore welcomes that.
And it also prevents the biological parents from taking back the child, especially when they are being abused by biological parents. So, previously I don't think it's been defined. So the biological parents can actually put in a request to the courts to say, hey, this is my son. I want him back.
Yeah.
So
I think the key issue now is we need to define how to bring up a child, and what is the best way, or is there a best way, or is there a prerequisite that a man and woman will definitely bring up a child well, or do we want to say that, hey, it is the values that both individuals, men, women, or men, woman, whoever, imparts to the child? I think that's important that we need to define.
Well, it's tough. At the end of the day, right, values are very important on how the child would be or would become someday. But how do you define the mother figure? Because they would have a different nurturing values. How do you define the father figure? Because they would have a different value that would guide you through your growing up years. If you have same genders, how do you bring that up? How do you define the male and the female roles in bringing up a child, which has to be balanced, right? The emotional quotient, then the physical quotient of it.
I think that's where you have your nature versus nurture, and we all are who we are based on our environment. Where we were brought up, who brought us up, and who we hung around with. But I think we have to be open because there are differences, and what makes us unique as an individual is the differences. Yes, a woman will have different values, different skill set, a man can compared to a man, but ultimately the child is made up of the environment. So we
it's
cannot.
it's not only the parents, be it the parents who are man woman, woman, or man, because like you said before, you need a village to bring up a child. So they're the grandparents, they're the aunties, they're the godmas and godpas, they're the teachers, there's the after school care person who's looking after the child. So yeah, you grow up with an environment like that. So it doesn't matter if you have two fathers or two mothers.
True.
Like a friend who is married to his partner, they got a surrogate to have their daughter. And she grew up perfectly balanced. She's now a medical student in Sydney. They live in Australia. So to her, there's Papa and Daddy. And there's no doubt about it because Papa and Daddy loves her. They both love her a lot. And she is her own person. Doesn't care what people say because, she's now going to be a doctor. So it's like she's not screwed up.
Well,
Like
that sounds
some-
like a very nice story if you are in Australia where people embrace you the way you are. But in this small country, people are relatively very conservative. Even your closest relative are still, what? You're not married? So the environment is a little bit harsh for a child to grow up here because society, not everybody would welcome that idea, even your closest relatives. So there's a lot more that you need to educate the society than the couple itself. I don't think same-sex couple have issues in bringing up a child perfectly or almost perfect. But if the environment, your closest family, have prejudice against you, the child will not be okay. Now, there will be scars. Schools are one of the harshest environment for a child to grow up is in school. The teasing, the grouping. What if they find out that you don't have a mom? It will be traumatizing, right? So I think a lot more needs to be done to educate the community as a whole before we can move forward with this. It's not about the parents. It's about people embracing that child through her or through his individual motions in everyday life. Like, you don't have daddy, you don't have mommy, oh my god. People start talking, right? So
So when will we be ready? When would society or the Asian, so you think our current Asian society, we are not ready for this kind of family nucleus or this kind of upbringing.
see, our government is very conservative.
No doubt. I mean, if you're in the government shoes, that you definitely have to balance.
Yes.
So like I said, this bill is fine. This bill is a step forward, but I think what needs to be defined and considered on a case by case basis is what defines
A family
a family
nucleus.
nucleus. I think if we can weave that in, or have that option. I mean, yes, we recognize the values of society in Singapore that a man and woman is considered a family, family nucleus. But we know that there are many circumstances of single mothers or instances where one spouse passes away. Because we need to also recognize and provide that consideration that, hey, this is also a family, a family like a village. So I think once we move in that direction, then ancillary support for single mothers will come into play. But if we don't have that clause in that bill or that consideration from an administrative in terms of adoption and all, we will never move forward.
But how are you going to put that in that bill? So now, raising a child, you need just like you said, you need the balance. So the yin and yang. If a couple, be it of any genders, can tell the administrator or the authorities, okay, if this is the yin that you're looking for, the yang that you're looking for, you can list it down, we can fill this up, put them to a test, done. Then you can raise that child. I think that makes more sense, right? Because we have the feminine and the masculinity values that you need to imbibe in that child, so the child will be a balanced person when the person grow up. So if you can show that, okay, these are the traits that you need to have, all these traits, then the basic necessity for you to raise a child should be there. I think the yin and yang should be there. Then they must provide.
I think I would disagree. I don't think it's the traits of male and female. And I think the bill did say outright the welfare of the child is the most important. So I think providing for that child access to education, a nurturing environment, I think that comes first and foremost. The male aspects, the female aspect, I think that's still it's not very tangible. But I think if if that love is there, and that nucleus is able to demonstrate that from lifestyle, from experiences, from a shared village, I think that should suffice. My greatest fear, and I see now, is iPad parents. Come home, put iPad. Go lunch, dinner, put iPad. You know, is that the right values? Will the child grow up and have a connectedness to the parent, or to the helper? So I think there is concerns, having the male and the female influences, but the basic parenting skills are still quite lacking in many families, young families, because they know no better. They have to work. No role models. Maybe when they were up, when they were brought up. So there are larger issues, but you cannot say that a man and woman per se would give you the best.
We have seen tragedies in male and female families.
Yes.
Parents just go awry.
Yeah.
But still, if we want to move towards this direction, the government needs to be less conservative. They need to understand. If they can't see it, then we cannot move anywhere. They need to brace the storm and say, yeah, this is what I think good values would be.
So I think this is where we want to have more discussions on this, to recognize that the values of a child is the environment, and the environment is the environment, the parents, the male, female, the village, the school. I think it's more than just simplistically saying that, hey, it's a male and female nucleus, and I think we may have missed that opportunity to highlight this in the bill. Perhaps there is a chance, but I think the discussion has to be there. I think that's why we are here, trying to see whether we can get people to recognize that, hey, it is the environment that defines how the child is. You can, and it's not an iPad family. It's not a maid that is bringing up the child alone. We need to see that the state, the community, the neighborhood, the schools have to play a bigger role.
There's a lot of work needs to be done, top down, including from the individual themselves to
Doesn't
embrace.
have to be top down. It can be sideways, can be bottom up. So why top down only?
If they can't see it, if the government or the authorities could not recognize you as a parent or as parents, be it of any genders, then it's always a very hard fight. If they will provide a little bit more leeway to this, then it's easier for people to embrace. Then when there's more couples of the same gender trying to adopt a child, then it becomes a subnorm, something like that. Okay. So we have those, but we don't disturb them. So it becomes, how do you provide that in such a manner that it's normal lah, it's normal now lah, we know lah, but we don't talk about it lah, but we know there are people like that lah. But when you tighten up the bolt right on top, right, you can't, people, it's wrong, it's just wrong, like that, because it's against the law, right? It's a crime. So they need to ease up a little bit and understand that we are moving forward.
Yes, I mean, we hope that the authorities would ease up, but we also, I think, need Singaporeans to make sure that they are ready to be parents. It's not easy, it's not easy to bring up a child. It's expensive, it's time consuming, but if you decide to bring up a child, I think it's important that you provide your time, your attention, and I think in this day and age, grandparents play a big role. Friends also play a big role. I mean, I know of godmas and godpas who really come and help. And it's not easy. And I think we need to recognize that there are a lot of people involved in bringing up a child. I think there's not enough recognition given to that. Everything is thrown onto the parents. Yes, you are the parents, you brought the child in. But I think we need to recognize that the village plays a very big role. Having to transport the child for lessons or swimming. And I think we not enough recognition is given to the village.
So I think if you want to be a parent, you need to be fully equipped to understand that you need to find that village. You need to find that godpa, that godma. If you do not have all that fully equipped, it'll be harder.
It is.
So you need to be the well-informed parents first before you need to be the well-informed couple before you can become a good parent.
I guess also at the same time, when you adopt a child because you can't have a child, or you adopt a child so that you can give the child a good home, you cannot have the mindset of I adopt the child, or it's for my parents. They want grandchildren, so I adopt this one. It's almost like I adopt a pet. So what if the child acts up? What are you going to do? Abandon at the dog run or what? You can't do that, you see?
Yeah.
So again, I think the law does in a way protect the child's welfare in that sense. But does it really protect the child in terms of being psychologically or even emotionally abused when it comes to, oh, this is not working out?
It's a tough question.
Yes. You just think about it.
If
know.
you don't have love, don't have a child. As simple as that.
But let's say supposedly my spouse and I are living our own lives, but we're being pressured by our parents to have the grandchild. So okay lah, adopt. But I adopt the child not because I want the child or I love the child, but because both grandparents, both sides, they want grandchildren. So okay. So in the end,
Do
who
not
suffers?
please anyone. You should, if you are having a child just to please somebody, then you should not ruin the child's life. If you're not ready, do not be one. As simple as that. It's important.
So I think this new bill does take all that into consideration, making sure that the entity or the group that adopts are right. So I think the guidelines are much needed. But I think ultimately the next steps beyond this bill is for the government, is for society in Singapore to have that discussion about, hey, what is a family nucleus? What is the new definition? I think that will actually help frame legislation moving forward on the Singapore culture, the Singapore family, and I think that is a bigger discussion we need to have really soon, because that will really formulate policies 5-10 years from now, because it's not overnight that, hey, society is going to change. I think it needs to be exposed, introduced, considered, and then adopted, and I think that will take 5-10 years. Unfortunately, that's how it is, but I think hopefully with this discussion we can actually have maybe a bigger town hall, and ultimately get everyone's input on this, and hopefully they will recognize that, hey, it is more than the male and female. It is the parties involved in bringing up the child, and I say parties is more than one, more than two. That I think it's important moving forward, because gone are the days where one parent, a mother and father is enough. It is just so taxing, complicated, that I think the village rightfully is needed to bring up a child.